Thank you, Mother. Anybody have their bookmark where we were last week? Where did we leave off? What?
130. Second full paragraph.
130?
Yeah. Second paragraph. One more suggestion.
Okay. Before we get going with the book, anyone here who's been out improving their resume, doing further intensive research, who's just coming back, like to give us your first name, please.
I'm Randy. I'm an alcoholic and an addict.
Hey, Randy, glad you're here. Yes, sir.
I'm Jeff, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Jeff. All right, good, Jeff. Glad you're here. Anyone who's brand new, just getting started, this is your first meeting. Yes. Oh, there we go.
I'm Barry. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Barry. Well, we're happy to have you here, Barry. Now then, anyone who's visiting with us.
My name's Calvin, I'm an alcoholic, first time.
Yeah, where are you from, man?
North Carolina.
Oh, boy, we're glad to have you. Welcome. Anyone else who's visiting? Yes.
An alcoholic named Pat, Delray, in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, huh? All right, glad to have you. We got a couple of Philly people around here. Yes, sir.
I'm an alcoholic. My name's Jim. I'm Hollywood.
Hollywood?
Yeah.
Which coast?
East Coast.
The East Coast Hollywood. All right. Okay.
Florida.
Anyone else who's visiting? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Monica. I'm an alcoholic.
Well, Monica, we're happy to have you here. And we have another hand over here.
I'm Chelsea, and I'm happy to have free alcoholic facility.
All right, wonderful. Oh, this is great. Well, welcome all of you. Now let's give them a big hand, guys. Now then, this is a drunk story, and you're going to have to pay real close attention to it. So listen carefully. This is a drunk story, but with a kind of a twist. A bear walks into a bar in Billings and asks for a beer. Bartender says, "We don't serve beer to bears in Billings." The bear said, "Just give me a damn beer." Bartender says, "Like I said, we don't serve beer to belligerent bears in Billings." The bear says, "If you don't give me a beer, I'm going to eat that woman at the end of the bar." Bartender said, "I told you we don't serve belligerent bears beers in Billings." So the bear ate the woman. The bear said, "Now give me a beer." Bartender says, "Like I said, we don't serve belligerent drug addict bears beer in Billings." The bear said, "I'm not a drug addict." Bartender said, "Yes, you are. That was the bar bitch you ate."
Thanks for sharing.
I have to admit, I got kind of a chuckle out of that one myself. Okay, now then, we're in the 9th chapter of the Big Book. We've been working together on the Big Book now for what, I guess about a year, going on a year and a half. And we are progressing at a very rapid pace, as you can see, since we've already reached the 9th chapter. And if you haven't been with us before, we're a little different here in this meeting, this group. We don't rush. In fact, we take the Big Book one word, one phrase, one sentence, one paragraph at a time. We try to understand what it's telling us. We try to see how it all fits together, because the Big Book is like a fine mosaic. And there are parts that fit together here and there and all over the place. We try to pull this all together to see how it all fits. So, in the 9th chapter, what's what's happening here is that Bill, in writing this chapter, is capitalizing or trying to capitalize on the wisdom that accumulated over a period of over 3 years, where the families of the alcoholics were intimately involved in the recovery process. And they came to the meetings. The meetings were in family homes for a large part. So the families were an integral part of AA. And as a matter of fact, as we found when we went through chapter 8, the chapter of the wives had found that they needed to work the 12 steps along with their husbands. And out of all of that, of course, came the Al-Anon family groups. So we can see as we read this chapter together, we need to see that it is based upon the experiences which they had. It goes a little bit further, taking those experiences and trying to project forward. This chapter is an appeal to those who read it, the families who come afterward. And they thought there would be hundreds and thousands, perhaps. They didn't know it would be millions. Encouraging them to do what the families did of the original 100. That is, they engaged together in spiritual pursuits. And they found that this is what worked. That it was very important for the families, including the children, to be on a spiritual path together. So there's a great deal of emphasis during this chapter on that aspect. And they found that the alcoholic whose family was on a spiritual path along with him, that was the one who recovered most quickly and had the strongest recovery and the most lasting recovery. Beyond that, there's another factor involved here which is important to understand, and that is that they had recognized that the alcoholics had literally demolished their families in many ways, that there were huge hurts, huge scars that needed to heal, many wounds, and that it was very difficult for the families to understand what was happening to the alcoholic in recovery. Sometimes they were, the alcoholic was so wrapped up in his spiritual work that he was ignoring his family, and he got really involved thinking he somehow or another been granted some kind of guruism, and he was out there ignoring his family and spending most of the time trying to get converts. And then on the other side of this coin, there were the alcoholic fathers who were trying to patch up their businesses and their reputation, getting the family finances back in order. They took this as their first priority. Again, pretty much ignoring the needs of the family. And it's talking here on page 130, if you open the book to that. If you don't have a book, there are a couple more up here that you can find out there. At the top of the page, it talks about that being a firmer foundation than a man who is placing business or professional success to have spiritual development. He will be less likely to drink again, and anything is preferable to that. Now, those of us who have spent much time in the world of spiritual make-believe have eventually seen the childishness of it. The dream world has been replaced by a great sense of purpose, accompanied by a growing consciousness of the power of God in our lives. We have come to believe He would like us to keep our heads in the clouds with Him, but that our feet ought to be firmly planted on earth. That is where our fellow travelers are, and that is where our work must be done. These are the realities for us. We found nothing incompatible between a powerful spiritual experience and a life of sane and happy usefulness. Now this paragraph is a wonderful paragraph for meditation. Stop and think what it's really saying. That God would want us to have our heads, our spirit in the clouds with Him. but that we need to keep our feet firmly planted on earth so that we can be of maximum benefit to God and the people about us. If you hark back to your third step, and then you begin to understand just how critical this is and how important this sentiment is. Because you remember in the third step, we had come to understand that we were tied up and captured and stultified and smashed by self. That we were living in a self-made hell. That our problems were of our own making. And that we had to be free of self if we were to live. And then when we got to our third step prayer, remember what we did? We asked God to take away the self. We asked Him to relieve us of the bondage of self so that we could be better able to do His will. And if you visualize it as I do, I like to see that as self, my spirit, in a sort of fetal position, bound up with ropes and chains and cables, and asking God to release me from this so that my spirit can soar with the angels. And that's what we do. We get to do that. We get to have that feeling when we meditate, that we are in fact with God. Our head is in the clouds with Him. Our spirit is soaring with the angels. We always remember that our primary purpose here is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. And so our work has to be done right here on earth. And if we were to get way carried away with this, thinking that we were some kind of spiritual being just floating around out there with nothing more to do but float, and there are a few around here who feel that way, these spiritual elite, I call them, we'd have no opportunity, no ability to be helpful to other humans. We'd be too far above them. And so it's telling us here that we are to strike that happy medium. And we do that by being willing to do the work. You know, the work that we do, of course we're taking care of our daily stuff, the stuff we have to do, the stuff that we've committed ourselves to do, the responsibilities, obligations we may have to family, to friends, to businesses, to the government, whatever. We must do those things, and we plan to do them. We make sure that we get done every day what's in front of us to do. But it still leaves time for us to engage in purely spiritual pursuits. And one of the most beautiful of those is our time of meditation. And those of you who don't meditate, you're missing something tremendously important. And also it tells us here that there's nothing incompatible between a powerful spiritual experience and a life of sane and happy usefulness. And usefulness means here to be a useful human being, be a useful member of society. Not just useful to God and those about us, which is critically important, but also in our daily lives. To be able to honestly say to somebody, what can I do to help you? And be truly willing to do that if we're called upon. And then it goes on to say this, one more suggestion, whether the family has spiritual convictions or not, they may do well to examine the principles by which the alcoholic member is trying to live. Now, what do you mean by that? Over and over again, we have to fight with this same silly idea that's been promulgated around the fellowship by some guys in Texas who wrote this stuff out, and the grapevine was crazy enough to publish it. That there's something called the principles behind the steps. There is no such thing. The principles are the steps. And what this is saying here, look, family, at least look at these principles by which Daddy, by which Hubby is living his life. If you look at these, if you really pay some attention, you may very well find that they apply to you too. That you will want what he has or what he's trying to get. It says they can hardly fail to approve these simple principles, though the head of the house will still fail somewhat in practicing them. Nothing will help the man who is off on a spiritual tangent so much as the wife who adopts the same spiritual program, making a better practical use of it. Again, this whole idea of leading by example. And this is one of the main themes of the Big Book and of the steps. In fact, in the third step prayer again, when we ask God to take away our difficulties, what are we asking Him? That by doing so, He makes us an example to those who we want to help of His power and His love and His way of life, not ours. And it's through that powerful example that we are able to lead and to teach and to strongly influence the lives of those about us. Next paragraph on 130. There will be other profound changes in the household. Liquor incapacitated father for so many years, and mother became head of the house. She met these responsibilities gallantly. By force of circumstances, she was often obliged to treat father as a sick or wayward child. Even when he wanted to assert himself, he could not, for his drinking placed him constantly in the wrong. I think that Lois probably dictated all of this. Mother made all the plans and gave the directions. When sober, father usually obeyed. Oh yeah, if he felt so damn guilty. He'd obey all right if he wasn't drunk. Father usually obeyed. Thus, mother, through no fault of her own, became accustomed to wearing the family trousers. Well, heck, that wouldn't be anything unusual today, would it? If you think back in the 30s, that was darned unusual. Father, coming suddenly to life again, often begins to assert himself. This means trouble. Unless the family watches for these tendencies in each other and comes to a friendly agreement about them. Now, way back here at the beginning of this chapter, if you turn back for a second, if you will, to 122, it forewarns us about this. Right in the first paragraph. Right in the middle, the alcoholic, his wife, his children, his in-laws, each one is likely to have fixed ideas about the family's attitude toward himself or herself. Each is interested in having his or her wishes respected. We find the more one member of the family demands that the others concede to him, the more resentful they become. This makes for discord and unhappiness. So we're seeing this again here. Unless the family watches these tendencies in each other and comes to a friendly agreement about them. You see, this chapter is taking the onus away from laying entirely on the drunk's shoulders and letting the family know without equivocation here that they got responsibility in this deal too. And the most important of those responsibilities is, if you can believe the Big Book, is that they make some effort to involve themselves in their own spiritual pursuits. Well, it would be crazy to think the book would say anything less than that, wouldn't it? Because what we've been reading all this time is a book which devotes itself to this one proposition, all the way back in chapter 4, that the real purpose of this book is to show you and me how we can find a power greater than ourselves, which will solve our problems. And these people realized when they wrote this, that finding this power greater than ourselves and surrendering to that power and doing the will of that power was the answer to our problem, but that we're not alone in this. We don't have any patent on the 12 steps. We don't have any right to hook them to our own bosom and say, you can't have these, stay away. Of course, it's what we do when we have these damnable closed meetings. We say, are you kicking it here? You're not alone. We're holding all of this to ourselves. Well, this book doesn't do that. It says just the opposite. Because they understood that the 12 steps in these spiritual pursuits and finding this power greater than ourselves and rising up above the mundane and rising up above all of this stuff that's been running and ruining our lives all these years is something that's good for everybody, and it's available to everybody. The 12 steps work for everybody. Of course, the problem is that they require us to be honest with ourselves and to smash the ego and smash the pride. Not too many people are willing to do that. We're willing to do it, some of us anyway, when we've been driven to it, when we've been pushed so hard and so low and been in hell for so long that we've got no alternative. But every once in a while, somebody comes along who really sees what it's going to do for them, and they want it badly, and they will grasp the program, and they too have this complete change. Complete change. It is, in fact, as the big book says, a rebirth. Then it goes on to say this on 131, drinking isolates most homes from the outside world. Father may have laid aside for years all normal activities, clubs, city, sports. When he renews interest in such things, a feeling of jealousy may arise. Family may feel they hold a mortgage on Dad so big that no equity should be left for outsiders. Got the illusion there? Your title to your life, Dad, is mortgaged to the bloody hilt. And we own that mortgage. And there isn't any equity above that mortgage for you to give away to anybody. You owe it all to us. You just stop and think for a second, guys. We wouldn't be here. There'd be no way if Bill's wife Lois had taken that position. In fact, she did just the opposite, didn't she? And when he came to her and he explained to her he was going to have to go out and try to pass this recovery along to others and ask her if she would support him, she said yes she would, and she did. She just as easily had told him the opposite. No way, Buster. You're going to stay home, you're going to do what I tell you to do. I'll give you 5 cents a day to take a spend on carpet. In the meantime, take out the garbage and shut up. But she didn't say that. She said, no, I will support you. Now, here the mother and children demand that he stay home and make up the deficiencies. And that would be a terrible pity, because this man, regardless of what else he may do, must give away what he's been given. In some form or another, he must give away what he's been given, or he can't keep it. He won't keep it. The big book puts it this way in Bill's story. If he fails to enlarge and perfect his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he will not survive. And so for this man to be imprisoned would be the death knell. Whatever it is he's learned, whatever the steps have done for him will eventually rot away and be of no value. Without giving it away, we don't keep it. And this is for every one of us. Going on, page 131, at the very beginning, the couple ought to frankly face the fact that each will have to yield here and there if the family's going to play an effective part in the new life. Father will necessarily spend much time with other alcoholics, but this activity should be balanced. New acquaintances who know nothing of alcoholism might be made, and thoughtful consideration given their needs. The problems of the community might engage attention. Though the family has no religious connections and may wish to make a contact with or take membership in a religious body. Alcoholics who have derided religious people will be helped by such contacts, being possessed of a spiritual experience. And by the way, remember now, when we read this phrase, spiritual experience, it really means, in in the context of the Big Book, it really means spiritual awakening, because it's really referring to the 12 steps, the culmination of the 12 steps being a spiritual experience, being a spiritual awakening. Bill originally wrote that as spiritual experience, as you know, and the editorial board changed it to spiritual awakening. Being possessed of a spiritual awakening or experience, the alcoholic will find he has much in common with these people, though he may differ from them on many matters. If he does not argue about religion, he will make new friends and is sure to find new avenues of usefulness and pleasure. You know, I have an experience to very briefly recount to you. A few years ago, I was introduced to the pastor of a fundamentalist church, and he'd been struggling mightily to help the alcoholics and addicts in his church. And he was having no success at all, much to his dismay, because he's a true believer, and but everything that should have worked with them did not work. And so I invited him to come to my house. We had meetings in my house at that time, and so he started coming and brought his assistant pastor. And then, as a trade-off, I started going to his church. And I was really amused, because I would sit through his sermons, and all of a sudden they started sounding like AA. And he was insistent that I had to convert and become a member of his church, and I just couldn't do it. I remember one day I was at home, and Pastor Tim showed up with this gentleman in tow, and he said, "I'd like you to meet so-and-so. He is the head of missions for the entire worldwide church." I said, "Wow, what do I owe this great honor?" He said, "Well, Tim, so he just wants to chat with you a minute." And three hours later, we were still engaged in a very nice give and take discussion. Eventually, the gentleman gave up on me. And I'm certain that they went back and urged the congregation to pray for me, because they really like me, you know. They're praying for my mortal soul, because I know that they're convinced that regardless of what I do here, or my private life, regardless of how close I may be to God, I'm still going to hell. And it's kind of I really don't like that idea too much, you know. And the screwy part about that is that if I believe that they're wrong and I'm right, I better be right. Or I'm in deep trouble. All right, we've been speaking to you of serious, sometimes tragic things. We've been dealing with alcohol in its worst aspect. But we aren't a glum lot. If newcomers could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want it. Well, this group doesn't mess around that way, man. We get it on. We absolutely insist. Oh, I love this one. Just 6 words. Listen to this now. Make it part of the way you live your life. We insist, we absolutely insist upon enjoying life. We try not to indulge in cynicism over the state of the nation, nor do we carry the world's troubles on our shoulders. When we see a man sinking into the mire that is alcoholism, we give him first aid and place what we have at his disposal. For his sake, we do recount and almost relive the horrors of our past. But those of us who have tried to shoulder the entire burden and trouble of others find we are soon overcome by them. You know, in our sponsorship workshop, we talk a lot about that. How easy it is as a sponsor to get so empathetic with the troubles of your sponsees that you literally get swamped by them. And you have to be real careful about that. We are good people, and we are sympathetic, and we've been there, and we know what the suffering is. But we always have to remember one very, very important fact. And no matter how much we may think we know, and how much we've experienced, and how much people trust us and depend upon us, We're not running the show. And ultimately, no matter what we do with people we're trying to help or to sponsor, we must leave the results up to God. Now then, that means quite simply also that we do not take credit for successes, nor do we hang ourselves around and wear sackcloth and ashes for the failures. Somewhere along the line, we have to let all of that stuff go and let God have His way with the people we sponsor. And that way, if we do that, we'll be careful not to allow ourselves to get too swamped. I can tell you that for myself, and some of you here work with me, so you know, that I'll listen to a problem for about 45 seconds before I say, whoa, let's see what we got for a solution here. Because these problems all pretty much reveal themselves in the first 30 seconds. And they all pretty much flow from the same thing. Every time you or your sponsee or the person you're trying to help feels bad, every time, without any exception at all, there's going to be a fear involved. And the first question you ask is, what are you afraid of? How do you feel threatened? What's threatening you? What's the fear? Because if you can find the fear, you find the root of the problem, don't you? And behind the fear is the fact of lack of faith. And a fear that is the product of a feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, and powerlessness. So if we're working with somebody, and rather than going through all the troubles and the travails and all the ramifications of the problem, let's just see if we can say, whoa, wait a second. Let's look for a solution here. First of all, what are you afraid of? What's the fear? What's the threat? And we can work from there. That way, we get to become very positive. And when we're in our home groups, for example, and the subject of discussion is Problems Anonymous, we've got to stand up on our hind legs and say, whoa, wait a second, guys. This is all very interesting, but don't you suppose we ought to talk about the solution? How about the big book? How about the steps? How about God? How about spiritual awakening? How about spiritual way of life? Isn't that why we're really here? You see, so many people have fallen for this treatment center thing, which is so damn dangerous because it sounds so good, that you're only as sick as your secrets. And therefore you've got to spill your guts to everybody who'll listen. And if you go into a meeting, the first thing you have to do is open your mouth and start spewing. You get to have verbal diarrhea at the drop of a hat. And once you have already emptied your guts on everybody else, then you leave feeling good and they leave feeling lousy. But that's on them, right? You feeling okay, maybe for a half an hour. You're only as sick as your secrets is a lie. It's an absolute lie. Because if you turn it around, look at what it means. If I have no secrets, I'm well. I don't think so. But it has all of that alliteration. You're only as sick as your secrets. God, you love us. We try not to indulge in cynicism. We think that cheerfulness and laughter make for usefulness. The last full paragraph on 132. Outsiders are sometimes shocked when we burst into merriment over a seemingly tragic experience out of the past. Well, why shouldn't we laugh? We have recovered. And we have been given the power to help others. And don't forget it. One of the most important things about the 12-step is it is the 12-step which empowers us to carry this message to other alcoholics. Not only does it empower us, but it gives us the opportunity to do so if we wish to accept it. Bottom of page 132. Everybody knows that those in bad health and those who seldom play do not laugh much. So let each family play together separately as much as their circumstances warrant. We are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. You might want to repeat that to yourself about 10 times a day for a while. God's will for us is that we be happy, joyous, and free. That is our heritage. That's what we have if we're willing to work for it. We get to have happiness, joyousness, and freedom. Things that we have never had before, but they are our heritage. God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. We cannot subscribe to the belief that this life is a vale of tears, though it once was just that for many of us. Oh, listen to this now. But it is clear that we made our own misery. God didn't do it. What we learned when we got to the third step. And in the third step, we learned that our problems of our own making, that they arise out of ourselves, that the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. That above everything else, we have to be free of this selfishness. We have to, or it'll kill us. Which sounds like a pretty wild statement. How could it be that selfishness will kill us? All you have to do is go back to basics and you understand that. We are alcoholics, which means that we are afflicted with a deadly, incurable, progressive illness. If we don't stop drinking, we will die. And we can't stop drinking. That's what powerlessness means. I can't stop drinking. And some jerk comes along and says, just don't drink. Well, how the hell do you do that? If you can't not drink. What's the solution? We have to get God to give us the lose. To do that, we have to be free to accept God, the Spirit of God, and we can't do that if our heads are filled with self. And so what it means is that by being tied up in self, we're blocking God. And therefore, we have no hope of recovery. And therefore, we will die. And therefore, we must be free of self or it kills us. And then it tells us that we can't do this on our own, that we don't have the power. That we are as powerless over self as we are over alcohol. That we must have God's help with this. And it's after that we are brought to this point where we must examine our lives and must come to this understanding that we have been trying to live our lives run on self-will. We've been making decisions based on self. That we've been playing God. And the big book says to us, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. And recognizing that this is so, then is when we made the decision. It says, therefore we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God is going to be the director. We would be the agents, he the principal, you be the father, and we be the child. And that leads us to the third step prayer. So you see how all of this comes together. And now, here again, in chapter 9, it is clear we made our own misery. And boy, this is a hard one to swallow, because so many of us have been in the clutches of the human solutionists who insist that we are the victims of a terrible childhood, of a society which has victimized us, of all kinds of things outside of ourselves that have caused us to be alcoholics, to drink. We are besieged with the idea that we have to own our feelings, that we're entitled to our feelings, that there are appropriate angers and there are appropriate resentments and there is appropriate fear and all of this stuff that the human solution has missed the point entirely. And somehow or another, along all of this, we love it because of They also tell us that we got this illness. We're sick people. We say, hallelujah, I'm sick. No wonder I did all that crappy stuff. And we run out and tell everybody, see, it wasn't my fault. I'm sick. Besides, I came from a dysfunctional family. I'm dysfunctional, you're dysfunctional, we're all dysfunctional. Anyway, again, the big book's telling us the truth. If we are the authors, we're on this room. Our troubles of our own making. And back in the 4th chapter, it told us, as we were looking at this question of the second step, it again reminded us of this. Faced with a self-imposed crisis, we can no longer evade or ignore. Self-imposed. So somewhere along the line, we're going to accept that this is true. We're going to accept the truth of this statement. And we've got to deal with this illness on the basis of being free from self. And the only way that's going to happen is with God's help. We ask in the 3rd step prayer, release me, God, from the bondage of self. And all the way through the book, the emphasis is upon self, and selfishness, and self-centeredness. You think about, for example, in the 4th step, when we're looking at our 4th step sex inventory. It tells us that the bottom line of all of this is whether it's selfish or not. It tells us that our sex powers are God-given and therefore good, not to be used lightly or selfishly. So here again, we're reminded of the same thing. We cannot subscribe to the belief that this life is a vale of tears, though it once was just that for many of us. But it is clear we made our own misery. God didn't do it. Avoid then the deliberate manufacture of misery. But if trouble comes, cheerfully capitalize it as an opportunity to demonstrate His omnipotence. And trouble will come, most assuredly. For some of us, it's just some kind of minor speed bumps on the parking lot of life. For others, it can be a veritable brick wall. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to that. But nevertheless, because we are equipped with the steps and with God's power in our lives, now we're able to deal with these things. All right. Now this next paragraph, several paragraphs, have to do with health. And I have to tell you quite frankly that part of this, the advice of doctors, which was rendered in 1938 or 39, I find to be absolutely dead on. This isn't something that our guys decided on. It was something that was fed to them. And I'm not saying that the doctors were wrong in terms of what they knew at that time. You've got to understand that when this book was written, they didn't know anything about hypoglycemia. They didn't know what the effects of caffeine and sugar would be on the bodies of those of us who have damn near destroyed our pancreas with alcohol. So we need to take that advice very carefully, and I would really strongly urge you, if you have any doubts about it, talk to a doctor, a medical person who knows what the hell they're doing with this blood sugar stuff. But I can guarantee you that that's a very, very serious issue. Now about health, a body badly burned by alcohol does not often recover overnight, nor do twisted thinking and depression vanish in a twinkling. We are convinced that a spiritual mode of living is a most powerful health restorative. We who have recovered from serious drinking are miracles of mental health, but we have seen remarkable transformations in our bodies. Hardly one of our crowd now shows any mark of dissipation. Now this harks us right back, doesn't it, to the paragraph just before our 4th step. on page 64, where it tells us that our problem is that we are spiritually bankrupt. And then it tells us that when the spiritual malady is overcome, we will then straighten out mentally and physically. And that's the truth. And this is reiterating that same thought. And I have seen these miracles of physical and mental transformation of cures or remissions beyond the ken of the medical and psychiatric profession. They're all over the place. There are people here tonight who've been around a long time, and you've all seen this stuff, so you know it's true. And one of the things which is so critical here is that so many people are coming in these days who have been convinced that they have some dread mental problem or some sort of imbalance or something where they have to take all this cocktail of stuff. And if they don't, they can't recover. And sometimes I suppose it's even true. But so much of the time it is not. So much of the time the depression, which has been the main cause of their malaise, is the depression which is triggered by and supported by fear. Massive, overwhelming anxiety and fear. And we have the solutions for fear in here, don't we? We have the perfect solution. We have the spiritual solution. Because the fears that bedevil us are phantoms, they're phantasmagorical, they're products of our mind. We can't get rid of them ourselves, but God can. In our fourth and fifth steps, we are given the spiritual solution to fear. And we are told that if we use this solution, that at once we can outgrow fear, and then ultimately our fears fall from us. Now, of course, none of us are here. Well, there are a few of us. We have some doctors in the room. But most of us are not qualified to give medical opinions. I don't even try. But the one thing I can do is tell you what I've experienced and what I've seen happen over all these years. And believe me when I tell you that the answer to almost all of our problems has absolutely nothing to do with human or chemical solutions. It has to do with the spiritual solution. And it is in the spiritual solution that we find all of the recovery that we need. This does not mean that we disregard human health measures. God has abundantly supplied this world with fine doctors, psychologists, and practitioners of various kinds. Do not hesitate to take your health problems to such a person. Most of them give freely of themselves, that their fellows may enjoy sound minds and bodies. Bill was doing a little bit of shameless stroking here because he desperately needed, in 1939, he needed the goodwill of the medical profession. And because they were getting most of their bodies out of the doctors and from the health clinics and so forth. Didn't want to turn anybody against him, and he was very smart to do that. Try to remember that though God has wrought miracles among us, we should never belittle a good doctor or psychiatrist. That's true. Their services are often indispensable in treating a newcomer and in following his case afterward. And that part is true enough too, because well, if you've had enough experience, you know that some people come in terrible condition, they're really very close to death. And they need a lot of medical attention. And in many cases, they need somebody to work with them on the psychiatric level as well. Now, here we go with the doctor's solution. One of the many doctors who had the opportunity to read his book in manuscript form told us that the use of sweets was often helpful, of course, depending upon the doctor's advice. He thought all alcoholics should constantly have chocolate available for its quick energy value at times of fatigue. Well, heck, if you give enough booze and even give enough cigarettes, chocolate's got to be something you would dearly desire to have handy at all times out of the gas. this extra quick energy at times of fatigue. He added that occasionally in the night a vague craving arose which would be satisfied by candy. Many of us have noticed a tendency to eat sweets and have found this practice beneficial. Well, I'm going to share with you very briefly my own experience. When I came in, I was having a really tough time. I was depressed. I couldn't sleep. I had palpitations, arrhythmia. I had night sweats. Sometimes I could hardly breathe. Got into hyperventilation, and so I consulted a doctor, an intern, well, I guess he was a resident, and he said, that sounds suspiciously like you might have a hypoglycemic problem. So what he did was put me on a high-protein diet, eating 6 times a day, small meals, no sugar and no caffeine. Within three days, I felt so much better. It was like an hour. Later on, I had the opportunity to read a couple of books about hypoglycemia, which was not recognized by the AMA until 1947 as being a real problem. And I think it's pretty clear that many alcoholics have done serious damage to their pancreas. Pancreas is that organ which contains within it the Isles of Langerhans. The Isles of Langerhans are a little gland that secretes insulin. And that gland responds to the stimulus of carbohydrates. And the idea there is for it to secrete enough insulin to keep the carbohydrate, the blood sugar balance within some range. Now, when that's not working right, what happens is that we don't have enough blood sugar in our brains. Hypoglycemia is low blood sugar. And that can be really hard on us because the brain lives on glucogen and oxygen. Blood sugar and oxygen. And when you deplete the supply of blood sugar, it begins to die. When it begins to die, it gives you all kinds of really weird signals. So, this is something that I urge you, if you have any kind of these symptoms, see a doctor. Maybe take a 6-hour glucose tolerance test. If you don't want to do that, maybe just get off of the caffeine, because you know what caffeine stimulates production of insulin. And it drives your blood sugar even lower. And candy brings it back up, but only for a short time, and then it falls off the end of the period. When that happens, you feel terribly depressed and you're flat. It's just it could be a really nasty symptom if you don't take good care of it. We have a couple of friends here who are diabetics, you know exactly what I'm saying. If they get too much insulin, they get into insulin shock. Well, you don't want that. Anyway, that's just, I hope, a word to the wise. And Doctor, again, please forgive me, I'm not trying to practice medicine, but I did want to pass this along as a warning. The Stairway Group has 3 meetings here every week. They're all on Saturday, 1:30, 7:30, and 9:15. We've already divided. We'd love to have you as a member. You're a member with us when you say you are. Marilyn probably write your name down somewhere in a book somewhere. I don't know whether she does or not. It doesn't matter. Some groups say you can't be a member if you're a member somewhere else. We don't care if you're a member of 10 other places. And when we have a business meeting, we're all invited to attend. One of the things that we do here is we take a group conscience anytime we feel like it. We don't wait around for a stupid business meeting. Whoever heard of an A group doing business anyway? What business have they got doing business? So if we feel like it, we take a group conscience. Let's see, is it tomorrow? Does anybody know if it's tomorrow that this club is voting on smoking? Anybody know? What's it say over there, Peter?
Tomorrow, 12:30.
Our secretary, Steve, is a member of the club and he plans to attend that meeting. And I think he's kind of looking for some guidance as to how he should vote. Remember that we can't control him because he's to be free to make up his own mind, but he was kind of looking for guidance from the group. So let's see, the group in the clean room, you know, clean room's clean anyway, so we're not going to worry about you guys. Unless, of course, you're bound to determine you want to sit out here. I guess we have to take your vote too. So Marilyn and Dominic, both of you stand up, please. We're going to take a vote now, group conscience. How do we instruct our secretary, Steve, to vote tomorrow on whether or not to make this club non-smoking? And let's see, how do we want to do this? Shall we say, all of those who are in favor of this club becoming non-smoking, please raise your hands, and then we're going to count them. Holy cow, look at those people right there. Okay. Thank you guys in the clean room. We're really not picking fun at you. Really not. And we're going to record your vote somewhere. Marilyn, write it down somewhere, will you?
You really are going to go to hell.
Now then, how many people would like to instruct Steve? What? Do we have a dissent here? How many people would like to instruct Steve that we would prefer the club to keep smoking in this room and not smoking in the non-smoking room? All put your hands up. Okay, you got them all counted, Dominic? Good, I thought you did. Marilyn, we need to record that vote in large letters somewhere where it's probably graffiti it on the wall so we don't miss. Okay, yeah. Oh, all right.
That's all right. They smoke in hell too, so you'll have a good one.
Oh my gosh, listen to this. Isn't she getting uppity? Holy cow. And I think we ought to have a group conscience on whether we're going to keep this treasure or not. We might just want to get rid of her right now. Okay. Now then, I guess the Half Measures group has come in from outside. And I had something I'd like to share with you. Somebody gave me the 12 steps for the Half Measures group. They have their own steps that they follow. Now listen to these are really great. Step one, we admitted we were powerless over our addiction and alcoholism, and that our lives had become like the Jerry Springer show. That's not too good. It'll get better. We came to believe that whiskey sour could restore us to insanity. We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of anyone else who could do a better job. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of everyone else and immediately figured out how to fix them. We admitted to God, ourselves, and anyone else who will listen that we don't have a problem. We're entirely ready to have God terminate all our probation. We humbly ask Him to remove all our debts. We made a list of all the people whose arm became willing to keep screwing them all. I like this one. Now, we made calls to all such people and asked to borrow another $20. Oh, my. We continue to lie, cheat, and steal. And when we were caught, we hid the evidence. We sought to apply medication to improve our conscience of God, as we understood and praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to rule the world. And having declared bankruptcy as a result of these steps, we used sex, cigarettes, and coffee to aid us in all of our other affairs. There you have it, the 12 steps of the half measure school. All right. Especially like that one about God taking away the probation, right? Oh yeah.
Sweet, sweet.
All right, now then, we're going to go from the ridiculous to the sublime. We're on page, where the heck are we? We're going to finish up this chapter next week. God willing, the curriculum. Somebody mark a word about sex, and that'll bring everybody back. In the meantime, we're going to ask our dear friend Marilyn to come up and hand out chips.
Hi, I'm Marilyn, I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. Hey, before I do the chips, there's the 29th annual intergroup picnic is at John Lloyd State Park in Dania on October 5th. That's the day after my birthday, 10/4, so I'll remember that one. But anyway, I think it's funny that you can access the park through Whiskey Creek by boat, if that's not apropos. Whiskey Creek. Anyway,
What's funny about that?
whiskey.
Oh, whiskey.
Yeah, a lot of us drank too much whiskey, and that's why we're here.
Oh, that is very funny.
If you're a real alcoholic, you thought that was funny. Anyway, I'm really under the gun now. I'm kind of scared because my friend Vinny over there says to me at the break, he said, Marilyn, I do the chips at the Pompano Beach Group, and I am the famous one for doing the chips, and I want to see what it is that you do with the chips, and now I'm like scared.
Don't worry about Benny, just do it.
Oh, all right. Now, anyway, here in South Florida, especially at the Stairway Strip, we have the chip system, and we use poker chips because they symbolize that you're gambling with your lives, that you pick up a drink. And by the way, the odds are real bad, seeing out to invariably fatal disease.
What's that? Invariably?
Invariably. Invariably, 100% of the time. So so if you pick up this chip, the number of drinks you're supposed to have is the same shape as the chip. In other words, O.
Uh-oh.
And again, if you pick up a drink, go, because you've just gambled your life away. Oh, and by the way, it's like an O, like in the word hope, there's an O, and where the HPE in the word hope stands for higher powers, everything.
That's good, yeah, you remember.
You like that? And it's white. The sign of surrender.
What color is it?
It's white.
White.
And I just want you to know that it's all white to pick up a white chip.
Oh,
And if yesterday the guys in the little white coats were coming at you, I hope you don't have anything against the white color, because it's okay to pick it up today. Would anyone like to pick up a white chip and start this way of life? White chip, come on. Pick one up. It's easy.
There we go.
All right. Now, after 3 long months, you've earned a red chip, and it is red because you better have read the big book by the time you pick up this chip.
Or else.
Yes, or else.
Yeah,
You know what or else means, don't you? Or else you die.
right.
Has anyone earned a red chip today? 3 months.
There we go. All right.
blue chip, has anyone earned a blue chip this evening?
What's that? No more blue lights in your mirror?
Yeah. Blue lights, all that stuff.
Blue skies.
Blue skies. Also, here, the thing we are most famous, I think, at the Stairway Group is because Jim actually makes his own 9-month chips.
How do I make?
Oh, it's amazing. We just found out that he lives in a high on top of this mountain. And in the basement of his little house up there, he actually melts down beer cans, which he finds on the side of the mountain as he walks up the mountain.
Yeah, that's Mount Trashmore. There's plenty of them.
Yeah, and he melts down the beer cans, and fueled by burning 12 and 12s and living sobers, he burns them down and melts them and turns them into these little silver things that have Bob and Bill on them. So he turns Bud into Bob and Bill. Has anyone earned a 9-month chip? Bob and Bill.
You better take one now because they're going out. The next batch going to have my picture.
You kind of look like these guys. Anyway, after 1 year we celebrate our anniversary. We have a big whoopee party here. I have Steve with 1 year celebrating the September. Has anyone else celebrating in the month of September? Yes! Who is that? 2 years?
I got 1 year.
Oh, and you're gonna have 1 year. Okay, good. What's your name?
Greg.
Greg, excellent. Congratulations, Greg. All right, so we're going to be celebrating with Greg and Steve. Anybody else celebrating the month of September? All right, fantastic. Take it away, Jim.
Thank you, Marilyn. She's terrific. Most of the time. She forgot to mention that she helped me with this minting of 9-month chip.
No, Igor does. Igor does.
You know what? Yeah, well, you should see her because she dresses up in an Igor suit. Okay. Any announcements for the good of AA? All righty. We're going to close the meeting down and we ask the people from the playroom to come in and join us, please.